Hi, today we're looking at the second half of Matthew chapter 18, and this is a passage about forgiveness. And the story starts with Peter going to Jesus and he asks him this question. He says, Lord, how often will my brother sin against me and I forgive him? As many as 7 times? And this is an example of how we can sometimes come to God with our good thoughts, our good deeds, and just say, God, isn't this enough? And really missing the point. Because Jesus replies, I do not say to you 7 times, but 70 times 7. He's like, you're not even in the ballpark with this. And then he goes on to tell a story. And the story is of a master, and a servant owes the master a large amount of money. But the master, out of compassion, forgives him. That servant then finds another servant who owes him a comparably smaller amount, but doesn't forgive him of that amount. And therefore, when the master finds out about this, he goes to the first servant, is angry, and he puts the first servant in jail till he can repay that amount. Now, as I looked into this, there's a few things that are interesting. So 10,000 talents is what the first servant owed. And I looked into how much that might be online, and some people thought around £50 million. Some people thought as much as 7 billion. Either way, for your average person, this is an amount that you really can't pay. There's no way I will ever earn that in my lifetime to be able to pay that kind of debt. So in a sense, you could look at it as an kind of an unpayable debt. The second amount that the second servant owed the first servant was, where was it? Let me remind myself. I think it was 100 denarii. I can't find it now. But again, the amount, 100 denarii. The amount is about £10,000. Again, this is rough estimates. I always remember someone saying to me, if I owe somebody £10,000, that's my problem. If I owe somebody £50 million, that's their problem. Because with the 10,000, I can pay that. It might be tricky, but I'll be able to do that. 50 million, you've got no chance of getting that money off me. And so when we're looking at these two debts, we're looking at one that's payable and one that's not. And so I believe there's a deeper meaning in the story to this, because on the one level, God is talking to us about forgiveness. He's talking about how he has forgiven us. And what he has forgiven us is the unmeasurable debt, the unpayable debt, the debt that no matter how hard we tried, no matter how hard we worked, we'd never be able to pay that back. Now compare that to the smaller debt. Now this is the things that our brothers and our sisters, our fellow people will sin against us. And these are things that we do have the capacity to forgive as well. And so the expectation is you have been forgiven so much by God that you will forgive others. I think it's worth saying as well that unforgiveness is one of the largest barriers to growth in faith. Obviously, unforgiveness with God is a big one. So if we don't repent of things, then we're not forgiven, and that's a barrier. But if we choose not to forgive others, then we see how God responds to that first servant with such anger, and he holds him accountable for his debt. And Jesus says this elsewhere. He says, if you do not forgive others, my Father in heaven will not forgive you. And so if you're trying to live the Christian life and you're not forgiving others, you're also racking up, in a sense, unforgiveness against yourself in heaven. And so we must forgive others. That doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean we forget, but we forgive and we entrust people to the Lord. And we can do this because we have been forgiven much. I do challenge you that if you find it hard to forgive, then have you really grasped how much God has forgiven you? How, in a sense, sinful you were, how large that debt was? Because I think that's when we fully appreciate the size of that debt, that we're then able to forgive others. And so it's worth taking some time, if you've got anything in your heart against another person, to release them to God and just to say, Lord, I forgive them. I entrust them into your hands. Thank you for forgiving me for my sin, that I can walk rightly before you. If you are struggling, then do speak to someone as well, and they might be able to help you walk in this, because it can be a daily thing that we can forgive one day and maybe we're going to do it again the next day as those feelings come back. But we're constantly giving that person over to him, because he is a true judge of all.